It's dawn here at the Tembaleschi household, and it's in the peace of this time of the day that you can start to appreciate the transformation that's taken place here over the last 13 weeks. This is my last official day here, but the good news is that this garden and the family have come together. For them, this is day one.
Tonight on the Odyssey, living with an abundant and sustainable garden. Biggest cucumber
ever!
keeping your plants at their productive best.
The beauty of this particular garden bed is that it doesn't need a lot of work to keep it in check.
And it's Viva la Revolution as we celebrate our 13-week backyard transformation.
Prepare yourself, because the backyard revolution is going to become a backyard festival. I believe it's up to all of us to help make this world a better place. And where better to illustrate this theory than right here in the suburbs of Australia's biggest city.
So 13 weeks ago, I set out to show you how all of us can not only save money, but also make a real difference to the world we live in by creating a sustainable and abundant space in your backyard, as I set out the blueprint for a modern Aussie garden in our backyard revolution. The Tembaleschi family from Sydney's western suburbs were the perfect fit for our little experiment.
We're going to fix your garden.
With 4 hungry boys to feed and 1 baby sister, this was a family who could do with some homegrown food. And although the boys had done their best, it was clear they could do with a hand.
See an olive tree? We only got 1 olive last year out of it.
Was having a quiet year.
Over the following weeks, we filled the yard to the brim with fruit, veggies, chickens, water tanks, a play area, and even an aquaponics system that will grow edible fish.
Your veggies grow off all the goodness from the fish poo. I love that.
Today, as dawn is breaking over the Tembaleschi household, we're going to spend an entire day tracking how the garden has changed their thinking, their footprint, and their lives.
Boys, you ready?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, can you go have a look if the chickens, they have some eggs?
Yeah.
Get them and come upstairs. Quickly.
It's part of my philosophy that gardens should do far more than just grow plants. And although this one's only just been finished, it's already changing the Tembaleschi's lifestyle.
How big is that?
Gold record.
Give me a look at that. We have to put that into the Easter show. The biggest cucumber
ever!
in the backyard.
Mommy, look! For eggs!
Wow, that's very good.
With 7 mouths to feed, the Tembaleschi's used to have a sizable fruit and veggie bill. But now they can see the benefits of growing their own.
The main thing is we're going to have fruits, we're going to have veggies. We're not going to have to go and buy any more all these things. We can have fresh because, as you know, at the shops they are from the year before, so they are not as fresh as mine.
And already, Kane can measure the savings in the family budget.
We'd spend probably about $100 on fruit and veggies throughout the week, and I'd say within 6 months we could virtually slash that by 80%.
Central to the success of this system are the revolutionary garden beds we installed.
The beauty of this particular garden bed is that it doesn't need a lot of work to keep it in check.
These wicking garden beds are fed from the rainwater tank, which fill a void in the base, watering the plants from below.
And that means that the plants, even on a hot, sunny day, they never wilt because the moisture underneath keeps them content.
For Kane, this sustainable approach reflects a lifestyle more in keeping with his European heritage.
Both sets of grandparents live off the land, and I'd say close to 50% of their produce they grow themselves. So it brings me back to nature.
And Kane also feels there are benefits that come from the kids being so involved.
It's given the kids ownership, a sense of responsibility.
Okay, boys.
And in terms of the family's carbon footprint, I'm happy to say they've made some inroads there as well. You see, when we arrived, the Tembaleskis produced 3 kilos of compostable waste every day. But with this garden, all of that can now be reused by either feeding it to the chooks or the worms or turning it into compost.
So imagine what you can do in similar or a greater or larger area than what we have here.
Thankfully, there's a groundswell of change that I've witnessed over my travels in this series. And it's not just backyards that are paving the way for a greener future. In fact, some commercial operations are taking the principles of sustainability to a whole other level.
This is the Kimbriki Resource Recovery Centre. It's a new breed of what we used to call a tip, and it's at the cutting edge of sustainable waste management.
Kimbriki is a 50-hectare waste disposal centre that deals with general solid waste, which is pretty much anything except food waste.
One of the big things we look at here is we stop thinking of things as waste and we think about what sort of parts of that we might be able to reuse as resources so we can get those materials back out into the community.
These days, an amazing 74% of all the materials delivered to Kimbriki are recycled. That leads to a radical reduction in landfill and an abundance of recycled products.
There was a time when this massive pile of green waste would have ended up in landfill. The beauty of facilities such as this is that it gives all gardeners an opportunity to bring their excess green waste that they can't compost themselves into a place like this and know that it too will be recycled and available for someone else to use on their garden.
Kimbriki gets the green waste from 4 local councils, a total of about 70,000 tonnes a year.
Mark, what's happening here?
Yeah, well, here we're processing our organic wastes, Costa, mainly garden waste and timber. And what we're doing is shredding them up and turning them into compost so they can go back out for reuse.
It's a pretty fierce machine, munching it.
Absolutely, and it's got a lot to munch through.
After the waste has been shredded, the mixture is regularly turned for aeration, allowing the microorganisms to work their magic.
What we've got in this pile of finished stuff behind us here is an army of little workers. You can't actually see them, and luckily you don't have to pay them. But there's billions and billions of little bacteria in this pile, and they're breaking this material down and making it back similar to the soil that it grew out of.
According to Mark, there is one crucial thing we need to do in this process if they are to produce beautiful compost.
One of the biggest problems with making good quality compost out of organic waste is contamination. By contamination, we mean anything that won't rot. So it's a simple test. If you want to put it out with organics, make sure it'll rot away.
Kimbriki produces and sells about 50,000 tonnes of compost a year that you can buy by the trailer load or in bags. Compost from green waste that would have traditionally gone into landfill.
What was brought in here as green waste 8 weeks ago has been transformed into this black gold compost, ready to go back to the garden. And it smells great too.
However, it's not just green waste that Kimbriki sees as a valuable resource. Here, they separate all manner of building waste materials and recycle them for resale.
Here's a great transformation of a waste product. It used to be those terracotta tiles. It's now been broken down into a gravel, ready for resale.
Something such as this you could use at home, on a side passage or even your driveway. Great colour and texture and good for the environment too. Recycled concrete has become an unusual bestseller, crushed in this massive tumbler.
A small amount goes out to builders and other plumbers and the like who use it in fill, but our big market is through the RTA, so a lot of our products are used under roadworks to build new roads.
Wood chip mulch production is also done on a grand scale here by grinding up old pallets and fencing. They also have a recycled timber yard and a buyback centre for building products that is full of interesting goodies. Reinforcing the rethink, reduce, reuse, recycle mantra that is being used not just at Kimbrickie, but centres like this across the country.
What we'd really like to see is to see waste eliminated. And the way that'll work is from people buying less product. 70% of what a person buys ends up in a landfill 6 months after they've bought it. So there's a lot of waste being generated, and we're sure that there are better ways that we can package products and think about what we're buying to make sure there's less waste being generated.
After the break, I'll give you everything you need to know to keep your backyard bearing fruit and eggs and veggies and fish. Oi, what do you got, Alex? Back at the Tembaleskis' house, and things are starting to fire up. For tonight's Backyard Revolution celebration, Kane's dad, Alex, is assuming the role of Master of the Rotisserie. Is this your spit?
Yep.
Did you make it?
Yep.
That's fair.
Me and my friend.
Really? Oh, I love the backyard innovation. Dad made one himself too. Now, with the kids safely off at school, I'm going to show you how easy it is to maintain your garden, keeping it healthy and looking great. One of the very first things we did when we began the Backyard Revolution was install our water tanks. 5,500 litres on the far side of the house and a 2,500 litre tank on this side. The tanks form an integral part of the overall design, providing fresh rainwater for use both inside and outside the house.
We're on our water tanks already, so we've seen the water usage drop by almost 50%. The washing machine's on there and the toilet's on there, so we've seen a big impact already.
Now, there's 2 steps you need to carry out regularly to ensure that the quality of your water is good. First of all, it's our first flush diverter. Unscrew it, the ball will pop out, and as you can see, all the mud and dust from up on the roof comes down here rather than going into our tank. Our filter has got all that scum in the bottom. Give it a rinse in a bucket like that. And the second task is to check this strainer up the top, where leaves and a bit of dust and dirt will gather as well. You can tip that into your garden, like so, shake it out and replace it. One of my favourite features of this garden is the aquaponics system, which when it's fully functioning will grow heaps of fresh veggies as well as fish. Setting up an aquaponics system like this might seem a little bit tricky, let alone when you mention the maintenance word. But actually, it's not that difficult at all. Aquaponics systems need a bit of time to settle in. In fact, it will be about 6 weeks until you can put in your fingerlings or baby fish. And so we're still waiting to put ours in. 9 months later, they'll grow to this size. Maintenance-wise, it's very straightforward. On a daily basis, you've got to do 3 things. First of all, come out and feed the fish. They're in here. Second of all, check the water level. And finally, walk around and pick your veggies. As I mentioned earlier, these veggie beds largely water themselves. And with a worm farm built into the soil of each garden bed, the only additional fertiliser required is a fortnightly dose of diluted wormweed from the adjoining worm farm. Early on in the revolution,
we introduced 1,000 or more new family members to the Tembaleschi clan, right here in our worm farm. To keep the new family members happy, each week they'll need about this much worth of green waste. Then, above this, a couple of handfuls of compost. Water it in, then replace the cover. Water that in so that it remains moist. And remember, once a week, to flood your worm farm. Don't be afraid, they won't drown. They'll climb out of anywhere that's too wet and it'll bring them up to where the food scraps are so that they can dine on your scraps.
Chickens are like the turbo boosters of any garden. They'll eat your scraps, fertilise your soil and eat your pests. All you need to do in return is a couple of simple things.
You need to vacuum and clean their house just like you clean your own. Don't actually need the vacuum cleaner, but a dustpan and a little bit of elbow grease is all you really require.
Once cleaned out, apply some mite or lime powder and recover with fresh straw. This process should be repeated every week to 10 days.
Chickens need water just like we do. Basic rule of thumb, if the water's not good enough for you to drink, it's not clean enough for your chickens. Keep an eye on it, change it every 3 to 4 days, and they'll be happy and healthy.
And when it comes to the chook feed, it's vital to follow a couple of simple steps to ensure a clutch of fresh eggs every morning.
When you're refilling it, don't splash it around all over the place, because that could attract other vermin.
Always remember to hang it above the ground to keep the moisture and any nasties out.
1, 2, 3. Are you in?
One of the most important things about building this garden for me was engaging the kids in every process.
Oh, fantastic. That shows that our design's working.
You see, for the future of our planet, it's vital that this generation learns and understands the basics of sustainability on a backyard level. And thankfully, these days, there are places like Kimbricki who are also teaching youngsters this vital lesson.
Look at all these kids. This is where the real change is taking place, because they're coming in here and they're learning how to think differently about their world and take practical things home with them.
Peter Rutherford is the senior ecologist at the Eco House and Garden Education Centre here at Kimbricki.
I want you to imagine the world where everybody is taken care of everywhere they go.
Established in 1999, the Eco House and Garden is a learning centre that teaches practical skills that enable households to live sustainable, ecological lives.
Everything you eat comes from the soil. And when you look in soil, it's amazing, it's alive. Amazing. I want you to say with me, soil is alive. Soil is alive. Okay.
One of the most important messages Peter passes on to young and old is that it's vital to keep food scraps out of garbage.
Food scraps in rubbish causes pollution.
Food scraps in rubbish causes pollution.
Very good, you get to play the drum.
When food and green waste end up in landfill, a strongly odoured toxic substance called leachate is created, causing untold damage to the local ecosystem. A problem that can easily be fixed by composting.
Compost, to me, mate, is the answer to everything. It is, yeah.
You just need to take a quick walk with Peter around this facility and you really can get a sense of the amount of produce that can be grown in a small backyard garden.
A big mixture of natives and non-natives in the garden. We're trying to show food production garden. We're interested in people growing food. That's really what we're here for.
The thinking here is simple, and it's a lesson for us all, that changes we make in our own lives can make a vast difference to the world we live in.
What's the most practical message people can take home from here?
To look in their garbage bin and look at everything in there, and because that's an indicator of our lives. And they can look in there and they can either compost their food scraps, or they can, something they shouldn't have thrown out, it should have gone to Vinnie's, or they should have reused it, they should have recycled it to reduce what's in their bin. You know, that's the message.
Back at the Tembaleskis, the lamb's sizzling and the crowd has started to gather.
After the break, we're going to put the garden to the test because the extended Tembaleski clan are coming over to celebrate the grand unveiling.
Well, it's time. After 13 weeks of hard yet enjoyable work, this garden is about to come to life with friends and family, sharing ideas, food and experiences. And that, for me, is what building a garden is all about. Here, we've created a sustainable backyard for the Tembaleski family, a garden that will grow as they do. And as the crowd begins to gather, it gives me time to reflect on the journey so far.
The backyard revolution began as a concept, an idea to take a backyard, a family, and explore environmental initiatives and sustainability ideas.
I got together with the Tembaleskis and we formulated a plan to change this backyard. And as I travelled across the country during this series, I drew inspiration for the garden from the amazing people we met. People not afraid to get their hands in the dirt to try new ideas. Ideas that I was then able to bring back and put into this backyard. From the aquaponics system in Queensland to the orchards in Young, down to Railton, the topiary town in Tasmania, or even the edible hedges from Heronswood in Victoria. I was inspired everywhere I went by passionate people with a love for the earth. But what was most satisfying was taking these ideas and watching them come to life for a great family.
I couldn't have asked for a more passionate family. And the way the kids have embraced the chickens just brings a tear to my eye, because every morning there's a ceremony to run down and pull the gate open and watch the chickens, the girls, style down the ramp and just say, well, what's doing? And the most special part of it for me is that I'm a part of it. And I look around at this and I just think I couldn't do it any better.
This is life. Yeah, you've got the kids playing, the food's on, the barbecue's on, the drink's available. We will build it, they will come.
Oh, look at all this yummy food.
It's my dream that every household in the country would have a backyard like this, reducing food miles and landfill.
It looks fantastic. Not only that, it's practical.
What you have done, unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it will really sort of suit their lifestyle and what they're into, yeah.
So if you want to build something sustainable, then go to our website. There, you'll find everything you'll need, including our 13 step-by-step how-to segments that will help you begin your very own revolution.
Well, that's it from the backyard revolution. What better way could you think of ending such a great time together with the Tembaleskis? That's it from here. We'll see you all soon.